Hey guys, Chris at Rockford Ordnance. Well, today we're taking a look at a product, the ALG AKT trigger. ALG Defense has just done a magnificent job with these triggers. This one here happens to be the AKT UL. They have a couple versions of this trigger, the UL and the EL. So basically, the difference is the UL is more of a target or precision trigger. Has a nickel boron coating, makes it super slick, kind of self-lubricating in a way. Also has a super short take-up, super short reset, and a super crisp break. It comes in around 2.5 to 3 pounds on the poundage. The EL, which is just a little bit different. Instead of the nickel boron coating, it has a nitride coating. While it's still crisp, it's more of a battle trigger. It's smoother than any other trigger I've tried out there, as far as, you know, maybe a G2 or some of the stock stuff, the Century stuff. It seems smoother than that. That one comes in around 3.5 to 4.5 pounds or so. Also, on getting back to the UL does come with a secondary spring that will raise that poundage about a 1/2 pound to a pound or so if it's too light for you. Rumor also has it that ALG's coming out with a mil-spec trigger for the AK. You know, something along the lines, they could, you know, sell it to some of the OEMs, similar to what Tapco does with the G2. So how cool would that be to see an ALG come out and in an Arsenal or a Wasser or something along those lines? I hope it works out for them and they get a contract or two out of it. They've also, looking at their website, they've got a ton of products now for the AK. One of which we've been testing for a little while. That's their recoil spring. We've put it in a couple of our Yugos. You guys probably know Yugos are, I won't say notorious, but they're known to have maybe a lighter recoil spring, and some people believe that's led to a couple problems with them. So we've been testing that out in our Yugos, and it's worked really well. It's something completely different than regular recoil springs. They also have a couple hammer springs out. One is a braided wire spring, so if yours is getting a little weak or something, you could. It's a nice replacement. They also have a high energy spring. If you got something, maybe you're getting light strikes or you're using ammo with super hard primers or something, you might want to try that out. Might give you a little better reliability, something like that. They also have their Go Juice. I think that came out, maybe a year ago or so. And I haven't tried it, but that looks interesting. But what I really like that I saw on their website today was their Go Juice grease. And they say it's a light grease, and I thought, man, how cool. That'd be really interesting for us guys in the AK community. Lubricate the rails and stuff like that with a light grease in the summer. Might hold up a little better than the oil. That kind of thing. So what we're going to do here is we're going to show you how to install one of these on a vepr, and it's the Ultimate that we're going to be doing the installation on. Installation is the same, whether it's Ultimate or the EL, other than that little spring, that a little weight, that's only on the UL, I believe. So we're going to show you how to take the old one out, put the new one in, and tell you what we think about it, and also show you a little bit of the fitment that needs to take place on some rifles. You'll see how easy it is on this vepr, and I think you'll be impressed like we are. So stay tuned, here we go. Okay guys, so first things first, let's go through the couple little things you're gonna need to do this job. Probably gonna need just a little hammer, brass hammer, or whatever you got laying around. A pick to get the legs of the spring out, a punch for the hammer pin and trigger pin. And I like to have a spent 12 gauge shotgun shell around, and I'll show you what we're going to use that for. So let's just disassemble this as usual. Take the top cover off. Take the recoil spring out. Carrier assembly. Take the safety out. And we've got a trigger pin retaining plate in here. If you have a shepherd's hook, now's a perfect time to replace it with one of these. They're cheap, much easier to take in and out, and save you some grief down the line when your shepherd's hook breaks at the wrong time. All right, so that stuff's out of there. Let's release the hammer. Take your pick and hook the spring legs and wrap them around. Whoop. That's why they call them cobra fangs, guys. You don't want to get hit by one of them in the hand. So you wrap them around the hammer there. Pretty simple stuff. This one's tied up against the rail there, but we got it out of there. So now you got the two legs of the hammer spring wrapped around there. So where you use the 12 gauge shell. Put it over the spring and the hammer, and it holds it in place there. It's easier than a rubber band, easier than a zip tie, and those springs won't let loose and nail you in the top of the hand. So now we're ready to push our pins out. There's the trigger pin. Pull the stock trigger out, and this one has a tube or riveted together, so you don't have to worry about the disconnector and spring going flying. Unfortunately, putting in the new one, you don't have that, so it's a little tougher, but not hard. All right, we'll push the pin out for the hammer, twist it, pull out, and there you go. Holds it all together. So the old one is out. Let me show you while we've got this apart. There's some talk, and ALG goes over it in their instructions and all. Some rifles, and for the most part, I'll say it's arsenals, have a rivet down here in the bottom of the receiver. I don't know if you can see that in there. Now, if you can see right here, this rivet, that rivet there, if it's sticking up more than, I think, 0.062, it could make contact with the tail of the disconnector. There were some reports early that the tail of the disconnector on the ALG would hit that, and it would do one of two things: either peen that rivet a little bit, or in some extreme circumstances, it would break the tail of the disconnector. ALG has since changed the design a little bit. As far as arsenals go, that rivet being higher than most was part of the design, supposedly to stop trigger slap. So in the arsenals, they actually designed it that way so the tail of the disconnector actually hit it and stopped any trigger slap. In this case, on this vepr, if you can see in there, there is a little tiny mark on that rivet. Barely. It's not peening it. It's more or less just finish wear. And that ALG's been in there for a good 1,000 rounds. I only took it out to do this video. I did not grind that tail on the vepr. It's a drop-in fit. Haven't had any problems with it. On my Arsenal 107, I did grind the tail up a little bit just to clear it, because it was peening it down a decent amount. Not enough that would affect anything, but I thought, hey, better safe than sorry. And I'm not going to file on my guns, so I filed that disconnector up. So that's what they're talking about with fitting, okay? So whatever you choose to do, whether you choose to file that rivet down a little bit or file the tail of the disconnector down, that's up to you. Let's take a quick look what's in this package with the trigger, okay? Again, this is the Ultimate. So we have the actual trigger and again, the silver one, so it is the Ultimate. Comes with a hammer, and if you look at that profile looks kind of familiar, doesn't it? I don't know if that focused in, but there we go. Disconnector and disconnector spring. So here is the tail they're talking about right here. And as it comes down and hits that rivet, if you push down on it, you'll see what angle it hits that rivet at, and you can kind of grind it off at that angle that it hits. So you're not like taking off on the end here, you're taking off roughly here. You want to file or Dremel or whatever you're going to do. 2 little roll pins, and these are to adjust the safety. And on the Ultimate, you have the spring for adding a little bit of weight, trigger weight or weight to the pull of the trigger if you feel it's too light. So let's talk about the safety. I'm going to drop the trigger in here before we do anything. Drop that in there, and I'm going to put the pin through just so I can show you what's going on here. Alrighty. And then we're going to put the safety in here. So, in the safe position, I should have showed you this first. Let me pull the safety back out. So, with the safety, when you swing the safety up into the safe position, this little nub here swings down onto the leg of the trigger here, like so, and keeps that trigger from moving and thereby releasing the hammer. So on the ALG, since it will be assumably installed in several different types of guns, they give you this pin, and that allows you to adjust the height of that leg. So when you put the safety in and you engage the safety, if there is no play in the trigger, you're good to go. If it'll engage and no play, you're good to go. You don't need to add that pin. If, however, there is some play in the trigger, your best bet then is to install one of those roll pins. And it's pretty easy. I'll show you here how to do it. In the top of the leg of the trigger is a hole, and that's where the roll pin goes in. They're a little tough to get in. If you start the pin, oh, you gotta be careful because they're easy. That's why they give you 2 of them, guys. Anyhow, if you start that pin into the hole, and they're tough to get started, don't get me wrong. Anyways, if you start the pin into the hole like that, use a vice grips, kind of clamp it down and get it started. Then the best way I found is to take it over to a vise, clamp it in there, and use the crank on the vise to push that pin all the way in. It'll bottom out in there and you'll feel it bottom. Once you have the pin in there, reinstall it into the gun. You don't have to worry about the hammer yet and all, but reinstall the trigger into the gun, put the pin through, put the safety in. Chances are with the full pin, when you go to swing the safety into position, it's going to hit that pin because the pin will be too long. So you file a little bit off the top of that pin and then put it back in and recheck it. You continue to do that until you can get that safety to just clear the top of that pin. Once you do that, you should have no play in it. Go real slow though, guys, because if you go too far and you have play, then it's all for naught. You may have as well have left it alone. That's also why they give you two. If you screw it up, you got another one that you can file down. But it's easy. A couple strokes of a file and bring it down till you can just swing that safety up and no movement in the trigger and you're good. Again, that's only sometimes. You don't need it. Like, for instance, I'm going to show you right now. We're going to install this. And on this particular vepr, it's completely drop-in. So let's get started here on the reassembly. If I can find what I did. So we take the hammer, the stock hammer, and it does not come with a new hammer spring. So we're going to remove the hammer spring, and that's fairly easy. Just slip it off the one leg, set that aside, put it on the new hammer like so. And then we're going to tension them by spinning them back up and latching them behind the hammer ears. And put our 12 gauge shell back into place to hold it. So now we're good to put the hammer in. So we will swing that into position like so. Get the pin through. And you might have to wiggle it a little bit here to get it to go in. There you go. So, hammer's in. Now, on the trigger, you got your disconnector. You got your little spring. I suggest the easy way to do this is dip your spring in a little red grease or whatever grease you got laying around. Put it up in the disconnector and that'll hold it. It'll keep it from falling out while you're assembling it. Set your disconnector into the trigger mechanism. It's a little bit of a balancing act, okay? And then lower it into the receiver. I grab it from underneath in the trigger guard area and set it in there real easy so that spring and disconnector doesn't fall out. So now the hardest part of the whole thing is pushing down and aligning the hole in the disconnector with the hole in the trigger with the hole in the receiver. So I'm going to lean down here and kind of line them up a little bit, which that looks good. And we're going to push our trigger pin through. And with any luck here, I will get it through here. There we go. And we'll get it pushed through the other side of the receiver, like so. And let's make sure this is flush. They're both flush. Let's put our pin retainer back in. I kind of use the pick to move the hammer spring out of the way here a little bit, makes it easier to slide the retainer in there. And whoops, dropped it. Okie dokie. Damn it, I'm not getting it hooked in the front. Hold on, guys. It's hard to see at this angle. There we go. That's in there. So we got the retainer plate in there. Let's put the safety back in. Drop the safety down. We can pull our 12 gauge shell off and release our hammer springs. Boink and boink. Make sure they went over the edge of the trigger legs correctly, which they did. And now we can do a quick test of the trigger function. Obviously it hooks on the hammer. We'll hook it on the disconnector. And the reset is correct. And boom, done. Let's put the safety on. And as you can see, no movement whatsoever in that safety. None. Nothing's moving here. So that's why we didn't need these pins. Everything on this vepr is, in fact, a drop-in fit. And it's that simple, that quick, guys. I save all my extra parts for the watch, so to speak, in case I ever want to put things back or whatever. And that is it. We can put our carrier group back in. Get this rag out of the way here. Just got it in there protecting the finish on the gun. Put our recoil spring in. Put our dust cover back on. And all set. Good to go. And it's simple as that. You know, the little bit of fitting that's required on some rifles is not that big a deal. So guys, as you saw, not that big a deal to put one of these in. Obviously on the vepr it's easy. In this rifle it dropped right in and it works magnificently. The other ones, let's talk about the other ones I've done. The Arsenal, like I said, take a little off the tail, take a little off the rivet, whichever you prefer. My preference, if I was to do it on another rifle, another Arsenal, I'd probably leave it alone. The peening that I saw on that, and it was an SLR 107, the peening I saw was not that big a deal. I would probably just leave it alone. If it makes you feel better, take a little off. You know, but your results may vary. I will say on the end pap, I had to do something a little different. The ALG, the hook, this isn't an ALG, but I'm just using it for an example. The hook on the ALG stuck up a little high. When the carrier came back, it hit the hook. I had to take a little bit, grind a little bit down on the hook so it would clear the carrier, and that was it. That's the only variant I've had to do that on. Other than that, the Arsenals with the rivet and the end pap with the hook, are the only two I've really had to get involved with, other than the end cap. I had to put the roll pin in to tighten that safety up, and that's really a simple operation. So not a big deal. Guys, I can't say enough good things about these triggers. The EL and the UL, they're both great triggers. Don't believe some of the talk out there, and try them out for yourself. I promise you, you'll be happy. I promise you, you'll like the triggers. If you don't want a light trigger, go with the EL. It's a phenomenal trigger. If you have any questions, anything I can help you with on these, please post any questions down below. I'll do my best to answer them. Also, keep in mind, ALG has a helpline. You can call and get a lot of information or any help you may need from there. Also, their instructions that come with it are fairly detailed. There's some nice pictures in there regarding the auxiliary spring, and also in tightening that safety up with the use of the roll pin. There's a lot of good information. It's a great trigger. Try it out. That's all I can say. Try it out. It's a great trigger. I love them, and I use them on just about everything. So, you know, your mileage may vary, but we like them here, and plenty other people do too. Let us know what you think. Let us know what you think. And as always, like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon.